I did everything.
Oh, got it.
Cool. Look at me.
Thank you, Representative Provenza, for setting us up.
No problem. And I think we, let me make sure I don't have any other prompts. Yeah, live. Looks like we're live. I see us on the studio.
And I'm going to try and share that really quickly as well.
Yeah, maybe, well, we'll just give us a couple minutes to make sure we let folks know we're here.
Well, happy Good Friday.
Oh yeah, it's Good Friday. Woo-hoo, woo-hoo.
Passover, yeah.
You guys have any favorite Easter traditions?
I haven't dyed Easter eggs in a while, and I think I might do that. I just feel like it.
My daughter asked me today, my youngest daughter, who's 17, if we were going to have an egg hunt, and I said no. Like, you all have passed that, I think, at this point. But we always hid eggs, like the plastic eggs, and we put money in them for the kids, like quarters and dimes, and some of them had dollars, and I think maybe a few $5 bills. But,
whoa, that's
dang-o.
Some pricey eggs there.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm excited just to gather with family and have a nice meal and catch up. And I am lucky that the chickens I have, my Americanas, lay blue-green eggs, so they come pre-dyed.
Oh.
Fancy you. I'm trying to find a live post on Facebook. I can share it. Let's see.
Okay, I just posted our link, so folks should know they're coming in. Let me see if we have anybody on YouTube yet. If you're watching this after 5:30 p.m. on April 15th, feel free to fast forward just a couple, maybe a minute, if you've come this far.
If you've come this far, thanks for hanging out, and know that our contact information will be out there in the ethers. And so if you want to shoot us a question, if you missed the live, then, open door policy, we're all very accessible.
Yep. All right, let's just get started.
Okay.
So I'm Representative Charlie Provenza. I'm in House District 45, which is in West Side Laramie and downtown Laramie, and it's changing. I'm now losing my West Laramie folks.
So I'm Trey Sherwood. I'm in House District 14, which is Northern Albany County. I gained Rock River, and so I went over and had lunch with their mayor today, so that we can open up those lines of communication, and I can be aware of what that community needs.
Good. I bet that'll be a big improvement.
We'll just like knowing that they can call somebody who cares, that's
and
nice.
Lives in the county.
Yeah, that's down the road.
And I am Representative Chad Banks. I represent a good chunk of Sweetwater County. Much of it is not inhabited, really. So it's a lot of red desert, a lot of Adobe Town area, but a good chunk of Rock Springs, also Southern Rock Springs, and that is also changing. And that Sweetwater County leg will be taken out. So it'll be really mostly Southern Rock Springs. So.
Cool. Yeah, it'll be interesting to meet all of our new constituents. I know I'm going to have quite a few new folks that I'm going to be knocking doors and just asking, what do you want? What's important to you?
Absolutely. And I'm sure that we will do a sort of redistricting, gearing up for door knocking session. But today we're focused on sort of a recap and reflection on the budget, and then talking about interim topics. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this question at you guys. The state budget is a reflection of Wyoming values. It's a reflection of who we are and what our constituents want. So what do you feel like we got right in the budget session, and where did we fall short and we still have some work to do?
Well, I'll just say I think we fall short all the time, because I would just love to be able to fund a lot of programs and make sure that we have more than enough resources, but that's not the reality we live in. I think we did a few things right. We ensured that some of our public employees are going to be able to get raises this year. So we increased that. I think that's huge across the board. But again, shortfall, it's not enough. And I'm hoping that we continue to have those conversations every year to more than catch up for what inflation has done. Because I know it's getting more and more expensive. And then I think one thing that we did wrong that was in the budget, but also as a committee bill, is we didn't pass Medicaid expansion. And that would have been huge for us. There was a really great article in the Casper Star Tribune recently about Montana and just really what are the facts around Medicaid expansion. So those were things that really are sticking out to me right now. I'm sure we can go on, and I know the two of you have all sorts of stuff. What about you, Chad?
I think when you mentioned the state employees, I think, and if you remember in one of the last meetings with the governor we had, there was discussion that we as a whole legislature has a tendency to do that in fits and starts. And so we raise them up and then we don't do anything. And so it sort of slows down and then we bump back up and then raises. And so I hope that we continue recognizing the importance of paying our employees, paying state employees a livable living wage. We're competing against the private market. We're competing against cities, counties, towns, and all of those other. And so I hope that it's not a one-time thing that then dwindles back down for, and we don't do it again for a decade. I was pleased to see what we did with mental health, with improving mental health access, the suicide hotline, those kind of things I think were really important. The Wyoming Wildlife Trust Fund, huge amount. I was a little disappointed in how much we saved versus how much we gave back to our cities, counties, and towns. I think and again, collectively, we get there and forget that the vast majority of our population live in, well, obviously everybody lives in cities, counties, and towns. And so how we fund those is important, and making sure that especially our municipalities and our county commissioners who have limited resources to their ability to raise funds, that we fund those well, and that's where that's where our communities grow, right? Is making sure that there is livability is a big issue, and how do we fund those things? And so I would have liked to have seen us put more money into those projects. This was a one-time infusion of capital that we really had an opportunity to do some really out of the box things with, and I don't know that we did as much as we could have with that money.
Yeah, we played so much catch up too.
Yeah, it was such an interesting session. So for us as freshmen, right, we don't have that luxury of a look back, but so many people sort of commented on how this was the smallest or the lowest and perhaps least contentious budget that has been passed in more than 10 years. So very lean budget, but I think what allowed us to set aside our differences was that influx of federal money through the American Rescue Plan. And so it allowed us to supplement some of our gaps. It allowed us to backfill cuts that we had made that were really drastic the last 2 years. But in reality, our revenue picture is so different than what it's been, in decades prior. And so oil and gas still make up the largest part of our budget at 53%. But what I find so interesting is now our investments make up 27% of our revenue. And so personally, I think it's always a balance between how much do we spend and invest in our people and our places, how much do we save, and now our savings are becoming our investments. And so while I agree that we probably put more in savings than we needed to, thinking about the income off of those savings is really what's going to present itself at the next budget session and give us more flexibility. So it's a very fine line to walk when we think about the needs of today and then the needs of the generation that will follow.
I continue to kind of ask myself, like, what's the legacy we're leaving? And I'm not sure yet. Like, we keep saying, we got to save this money, and we treat our savings like it's retirement. Like Wyoming is going to go retire to Montana. We're just going to leave. And that, while that might work in personal budgets, that's not how we should be running things here. So Yeah, I think, while this might have been the least contentious budget, I mean, I'm just looking back at the amendments, for just the first or the second reading of the budget in the House side, we had 55 amendments. And then I think on third reading, we had 48. That's I think a lot more than usual. So I mean, I think part of the lack of contention was just we had so much to do. Because I know a lot of people wanted to just see a lot more, and we were definitely them. One person did ask, when will Medicaid expansion be reintroduced? And it will be reintroduced next year. And I have hope for next year, just because this year we had such a high burden to be able to get that through, because introduction required a 2/3 vote instead of a just simple majority. So we are, a lot of people are really working really hard to get those votes, and I think we've got them. So we're just going to keep pushing folks who are impacted and demanding what they should have already and save our state some money. So you'll see that again.
So Carly, you're so good at this, but stay engaged throughout the summer or through what we call the interim period, and know that the conversation doesn't have to wait until we go into session in January. Like that energy and momentum around this issue can continue throughout the rest of this year.
Yeah, and I think, you both mentioned that. I think it's important that people continue to email their legislators, and it's not just legislators. I mean, it is a legislative issue, but you also, I think, need to make sure that the city council feels that the county commission feels that pressure, that the top 5 state elected, not that all of those folks have a direct vote on that or a direct voice, but they also have a role in making sure that the legislature knows that's an important topic. And so I think making sure that those voices are heard at all levels is really important. And that it just doesn't happen in January, February next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, I mean, just before we kind of get into that next topic, that's one of the things I want to do more of, that I feel like I did as much as I could, but I need to do more, is just like that engagement and outreach. Because as much as I did, I still wasn't able to cover everything. So hopefully next year we can, I'm hoping to bring maybe interns, bring a team with me to kind of help with me and help the rest of us. And then we can be more able to communicate in real time, because there's just so much going on.
There is a lot going on. But yeah, before as we lean into this idea of like interim and what that means, I want to just reiterate what Representative Banks said about we are all very approachable, and now is the time to reach out. Please don't assume that something that is important to you is that we are aware of that issue. We are open to be educated, to hear from you, to understand what's working, what's not working, and being able to reach out and say like, hey, let's go grab coffee, or let's meet at the park and walk our dogs. Like, we're very approachable, right? So please reach out if there's an issue that's important to you, something you're stuck at or confused with, and know that we are here to engage with you.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully these Freshman Fridays are helping with some of that approachability. And so another question, related to budget, and I think we maybe touched on some of this, is just, what are the ARPA funds going towards, and like, what are maybe you most excited about, and what are you disappointed that we spent money in? So Trey, we'll start with you because you went last time.
Okay, awesome. So I am excited that we are spending, I think it's about 10 million in ARPA money, American Rescue Plan funds, on workforce services. So during the first phase, that's horrible to say, first phase, the first year of the pandemic in 2020, we really focused those CARES Acts on direct assistance to businesses. And so that interaction between state funds or funds flowing through the state directly to business owners happen fast and furious through the Wyoming Business Council. This round, we're really thinking about our workforce, our individuals, those who are interested in apprenticeship programs. And so understanding like, how do I get this career path going, whether that's through your community college or UW, or whether college isn't for you and you want to get in with a certain industry and have a more formal structure. Those apprenticeship programs are being ramped up, as is recruitment and retention and training for healthcare workers, early childhood, those working in mental health. And we know that Wyoming is in a period of transition. So making sure there are resources there for those who are working in the oil and gas industry to be able to take that existing talent and retrain and make sure that people are finding jobs within our state. And so this is something I'm excited about. Workforce services, if you are interested in taking advantage of these, you can reach out to your local workforce development center. So Wyoming Workforce Services is a statewide initiative, but they have offices regionally. And if you have trouble connecting, we're happy to find your local connection and help you access these services.
Yeah,
What
and
about you, Chad?
I would just add on to that when we talk about oil and gas, the coal impact of communities, that's obviously a big impact here in Sweetwater County and what's happening with the coal mines here and the coal-fired power plants. And so those retraining are really important. And, there's some exciting programs that are coming like through our community college here, and I know through the Community College Network and UW, and we have a power line program that working with Rocky Mountain Power to train, really good paying jobs that are on the ground that they're always looking to fill. And so that power line program is a great one here at Western Wyoming Community College. And there are others like that that are being developed and will hopefully be on the ground here by next fall. And so I think that those are exciting programs. The investment in the Wyoming Wildlife Trust Fund, while not isn't directly resulting in jobs today, but we know how valuable the wildlife is for our industry, for our culture, for our communities. And so investing more money in those programs, I think, is good. Again, echoing what Representative Sherwood said, not healthcare, but mental health care, which is really important. And so I hope that those will have some direct impact, especially as we're coming out of the pandemic, hopefully, and we see what that has done to all of us. I mean, how that has impacted our mental health. And so those healthcare dollars, I think, will be important. So those are important for me. And then some tourism dollars. Again, those are some areas where our economies are able to grow in a different fashion than what we've seen traditionally. And so hopefully we can see some impact for tourism dollars. One of the things that's been discussed is like a state park here in this part of Wyoming, and that could have some real impact in tourism and tourism growth. So anyway, those are where I hope we'll see those impacts of that ARPA funding.
Yeah, and to add on to that Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust Fund, I serve on that select committee of determining, bringing the bill so that we can fund large projects, and that it was important to be able to put into that trust so that it could pay for itself, right? So it could continue to help pay for projects, and many of them get other matches. So they get funding from either private entities like Bass Pro Shops, I think, donated money to a project. But it does create jobs across the state. I mean, here in Albany County, we have an excavation company that they were really struggling, but because of projects like that, they just now exclusively do kind of river restoration projects, and so they've really been able to kind of stay in business and continue to employ people, and all of the supplies that we buy are local. So we're not ordering things from out of state. We go to the local store in town, to wherever we can to get the materials that we need to be able to finish those projects. So it is, I think there's just a ton of ways that benefits. And when we talk about Wyoming's legacy and who are we, our heritage in this state, talk about wildlife. I mean, our open spaces and our wildlife are it. Like that's what we need to be thinking about for our future, continuing that legacy. And then with the suicide prevention, specifically into the benefits of that is that, right now we have, I don't even know if it might be 24 hours, but there's a national line, right? And so we do have some help here in the state, but being able to put more funding towards that so that we have people here in Wyoming that can help get people who are in a crisis situation to services in their community is super helpful, because if someone in another state is answering the line, they might be helpful, but they are not going to have an understanding of like, okay, I'm telling you to go to this place and you're over here. Like, okay, yeah, that's the nearest place, but it's still 2 hours, or we have the highest suicide rate every year, one of the highest at least, and we just don't have what we need. We haven't addressed that, and so this is something, but again, we need more. So
it's interesting, in talking about, and we did fund that, and that was good, but I think we also did some damaging things when we talk a lot about the suicide rate and which didn't pass, but the anti-trans bill, the fairness in sports bill, which, that's a community that has a very high, an alarmingly high suicide rate. And we have seen members of that community that are from my community that were students at the University of Wyoming that have died by suicide. And so we put money into it, but then we go around the back door and do things that are really hurtful to particular communities that are incredibly impacted by suicide. And so I hope that we're able to rectify that and do a better job of realizing those unintended consequences of things like that in the future. And I'm afraid we're not there yet. And I think that's going to get worse, but I'm hopeful that we can do some good things as well.
Yeah. So important to have things close to home, right? To be able to be doing work with our communities, because state legislature is just not doing it.
Right.
So I think, is there anything else in ARPA? I know Trey fought really hard for some really good ARPA dollars to go towards all sorts of projects. And Representative Sherwood is fierce in her advocacy for communities, and I was just so proud to watch her and you, Representative Biggs, just work for the people back home on all the creative ways to use ARPA dollars. So good job. We're moving the needle, and some of them got passed, right? But
oh yeah, I think it's been lovely to be part of this coalition, our little trio of freshmen here, as we learn to navigate the system, whether that's the budget or federal funds. And what I love most about the three of us is that we do a good job of listening to what our communities need, and that there's this disconnect of national headlines and national rhetoric and bills that are presented that are literally just cut and paste from another state that have no foundation in Wyoming and no relevance to our community members. And so just know that the three of us are on the ground. We're here to listen to you and what your needs are, and not to buy into whatever that fancy, flashy headline is that may have nothing to do with your life or what's going on in our local government or schools. So we are very much grounded in community.
Yeah.
That's a great way to say it, because I think so often things get blurred and we see what's on the national news, and that very often does not have a big impact to us, to folks trying to pay their mortgage, folks trying to put their kids through school, folks trying, all those kind of things. And so we do get sort of bogged down with them. And I think we've done a good job about trying not to that. And I think for the most part, the Wyoming legislature tries to stay about that, but we did get mired in a few of those dog whistle kind of things this year, but hopefully that's better about that.
Yeah. Yeah, but we have interim coming, which I know we're all excited about because this is when we get to insert our ideas and watch them just go along. And
So I
at
think
least that's how I see it.
I love it. I think we should step back though and be like, what is interim? What does that mean? And then how are the topics chosen? So does anybody want to take on that, like the process that we did in March?
Yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Jack, go for it.
I was just going to say, I think that is something that folks don't understand, that these topics that we're going to be discussing over the whole year were set or were suggested during the last session. And so when new things come before, it's not always easy to bring up something in the middle of it for a committee. And so we suggested topics for our committees or other committees. The same with the other legislators suggest topics. Topics are suggested by other folks, by the community at large, by citizens. And then those are assigned to various committees. And then Management Council, was it just last week?
April 8th, they met.
Yeah. Last Friday, Management Council meet, and Management Council are legislators selected by the overall body to represent themselves. Meet and select what those topics will be for those interim committees for the coming year. And so those are really the only topics that those committees can and do discuss at their interim meetings and work on developing legislation or concepts for the coming session, which is sort of interesting.
Yeah, so there's that feedback time and then a vetting time to narrow and focus in. And so in theory, each committee should have maybe like a top 5 things that they work on throughout the summer and fall and get bills ready to be presented then in January.
Yeah, and it's interesting through the process of seeing like we have our joint meeting where we talk about all the topics, right? And then we rank them each, or at least my committee, we rank them, we hand them into our chairs, and then to kind of just see what ends up being the recommended topics for that often the chairs just picks, which is the benefit of being able to be a chair of a committee, right? Yeah, so I'll jump in. Judiciary is really trying to spread ourselves very, very thin, I think, because I know we proposed 10 topics, and that's a lot. I think last year we had 7, maybe. Yeah, I think it was 7, and it just was not enough time. We really needed to spend more time doing like deep dives into some of the topics, and we just didn't, and we ended up with a 4th meeting. So yeah, just definitely important to figure out how many we're going to talk about and what we're going to prioritize. And so for judiciary, the first topic of priority is trespassing, which I think will be far more interesting than it sounds, because it has the potential to be about corner crossing. And boy, I hope the judiciary is ready for our hunters and anglers. Me being one of them, like, if you try to tread on my ability to cross a corner for one piece of public land, so that's where you have a corner where you have private property on 2 and then public land on the other 2, and they're catty corner, can you then step onto the other side to maybe hunt or fish? And so depending on where the committee is going to land and how we prioritize that topic will be an interesting one and something that folks should really pay attention to. And then in addition to kind of that corner crossing, we're also including things like drone use. So, where can you fly a drone and how, and when is it trespassing or not? And then one thing that I'm happy and excited to see is treatment courts and substance abuse issues. So looking at which, I mean, for me, and I think what evidence would support is that we need to move that away from our our criminal courts. And so having a drug court in every county, I think would be really important to help folks with substance abuse rather than look to the penal system to incarcerate them. And yeah, I mean, I have all the 10 topics. I'm certainly not going to go over all of them.
So those are the ones you're most excited about?
Yeah, well, I think they're definitely, I mean, they're in our top 3 priorities and they are important. And yeah, they're going to take up a lot of time.
I was just going to echo the one that you mentioned, the trespassing one, which I hope folks really sort of get engaged about that. We did have some emails when there was a proposed bill this year, but that has the potential to lock off or block off millions of acres of public land. And so how that's handled and what will happen with that is a huge, it's a huge topic that really could have huge ramifications for, like you said, sportsmen, anglers, hikers, recreationalists, anybody really. It's public land. And so how we access that is incredibly important.
Yeah, it's our land. It belongs to us.
Right. One of the projects so I'm on the Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources Committee, and one of the top priorities for our committee is the expansion of trails in Wyoming. It was suggested by myself and Representative Sandy Newsom. And so it's how do we build, and again, this also sort of relates obviously to tourism. So how do we make those trails and things more accessible? How do we expand our trail networks in the community? It might be like the Riverwalk in Laramie. It's also deals with safe access to and from schools, particularly in communities maybe where there are no sidewalks, that are more rural, where kids are walking on a shoulder or on the street to school. And I know, there's some discussion that perhaps Wyoming doesn't need trails, that, we have, as we just mentioned, millions and millions of acres of public land. But when you talk about trying to recruit new businesses, when you talk about trying to recruit young people to our community, those are the kind of things they want, is those kind of amenities. And in doing this, as we plan for this, there was actually in 2018 a study that was produced at the behest of the Wyoming State Legislature for a bicycle and pedestrian system. I think this is like a 120-page report that they did to sort of get moving in that direction. And how do we do that? And then of course the pandemic hit and then there was no funding. And so that study that's now 4 years old sort of has sat on the shelf. So we're bringing that study back. I hope. I just sent it to our chairpersons last week, I think it was, and there's a whole coalition. So I'm really excited about the possibility for that and what that could mean for our communities, for tourism, for kids going to school and so forth. So yeah, that's one of the big ones that is a biggie to me.
And Chad, you should make sure you tune into Judiciary, because since we're covering all the topics under the sun, our priority number 7 is safety of crosswalks.
Yeah. So they really dovetail. We also, one of the things that we continually discuss is gambling, not lottery so much as the historic horse racing, skill games, those kind of things. And I think we may have tried to sort of push that off onto either Judiciary or Revenue, if I remember right.
I think
so.
Chad, I think Revenue picked it up. You might get a break this year.
Which, it really sort of belongs there. I don't know that it's, I guess it's sort of recreational, but yeah, it's a huge topic. Lots of interest in how we expand that with some real strict parameters. And so anyway, that'll be interesting how that continues to develop in our state, because it's obviously not going anywhere and it's only growing, and we see those things all the time. So.
So the Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, the committee that I am on, will, surprise, surprise, focus on energy issues. And so this is pretty broad, right? It's anything concerning oil and gas, nuclear, carbon sequestration, hydrogen, and federal bonding and federal regulations. And so I'm sure that we will be tracking those conversations about the federal mineral royalties and those rates and what that means in terms of its impact on the environment and Wyoming's economy. I know that we're really digging into hydrogen with help from the Wyoming Energy Authority. And so I think there's some promising development there. Our priority number 2 harkens back to our workforce development. So really looking at our apprenticeship programs and what the law says or what statute says about how these should work, but realizing that there's a disconnect and that what's on paper isn't truly reflected when someone goes to take advantage of these programs. And so we will probably be recommending statutory changes to improve apprenticeship programs. Priority number 3 is the Industrial Siting Act. When I saw this at first, I was like, that sounds boring, but it's actually a very controversial topic for our local government, especially our small communities. And so right now, the Industrial Siting Committee oversees requests from communities for local impact assistance payments. So what that means is if a wind project comes in, if a hydrogen project comes in, a new rig is opened or drilled, communities, say Rock River as an example, there is an impact in terms of influctuation of workers, use and wear and tear of the roads, need for law enforcement or fire services. And some of our communities are so small that it's a volunteer fire department or they don't have a police officer on staff. And so there's a process where those communities can go and ask for local impact assistance payments. And it turns out that communities aren't getting those funds, that it's been a very contentious process. It's been a process that there's no way to rebut. So you go as a community, you make your case, you say, I need a new fire truck. I need a stipend to then staff the fire department. Industrial Siting Commission says, we don't really believe you. We really think that that's our responsibility. And that's it. That's the end of the conversation. And so while we see industry growing and our energy industry expanding, the process we have in place to make sure that our local communities can keep up with that growth is broken. So there'll be a lot of conversation around how to fix that process.
I think that sort of echoes a lot of what happens in the way I have my experience with the legislature. Is it really in so many ways seems like this us against them, right? Like cities and counties against the state, instead of we're all in this together and how do we make it all work together? And so often it does not come across that way. And cities and counties and towns feel sort of slighted, and the legislature, it often seems like they think the cities and counties and towns are taking too much or trying to do something that is not allowed. And it's just interesting to me as a freshman and somebody who's been on the city council, how that relationship is sometimes adversarial, and we're too small to be adversarial. Yeah. But that industrial siting is a perfect example of that. Like, oh, we have this whatever coming in, we need help. Oh, you really don't need help. You're fine. We don't believe you. And it's just, it's interesting and funny and sad, and all those adjectives you could throw at it.
Yeah, and just a kind of aside, but the council for the industrial siding, it has a vacancy right now. And so if you are and I believe it's a requirement for unaffiliated, so independents, so if you're registered Democrat or Republican, I don't think you are able to be a part of it, but they are looking for someone who's unaffiliated, and or maybe it doesn't matter as much, but it says unaffiliated as a vacant spot. And that's something that, like, these are the types of positions in the state and in our local communities that are really important and impactful. Like, talk about, zoning committees or commissions, like they're also really incredibly important for how we look at conservation of areas. And so just anybody who sees this and is interested, feel free to contact me. I'll put you in touch with the right information. So I think those are the main questions that we went over.
one thing I always do like to kind of ask myself, and I'm sure you all do this as well, is I leave the session and I feel like, oh, I didn't do enough. I should have done this and this and this. And I'm trying to kind of reframe that away from what should I have done to how can I be better? How can I better serve my community in the next term? Granted, I'm given the do so. Here's what ideas are for me. I'll just say that I want to be better at being able to like communicate with people during the session, getting that information out, doing calls to action.
We're sort of losing you a little bit, Carly, or is that me?
About what you think needs to happen. Are we lagging out?
Yeah, a little bit. I think what you mentioned, and you broke up there for a minute, but it's interesting, since we're all freshmen, this was only our second session, although it's all considered one, right? I'm not sure how the lingo works, but our second time there. The difference to me in January 21 versus when we were there, or I guess winter 2021 to this year, winter 2022 when we were there, is night and day how much more comfortable I felt, how much I knew the lingo, how much I knew the process, how much I knew who to talk to. It is fascinating, and it's sort of in a way unfortunate that as freshmen there wasn't a better way for us to sort of get some training, and I think we did miss some of that because of COVID and our training was online.
Yeah.
But it really does take a while to figure out those logistics, like how do you get your bill through, who to talk to, what does committee of the whole mean, what is how do things get through. And so it was really interesting to me how much more comfortable I felt this year, and knowledgeable probably isn't the right word, but just at ease. It didn't feel quite so much like drinking out of a fire hose. And I know we heard that term a lot. And I don't know that I understood what that term meant until last year when we were first elected. And it was just overwhelming for me. There were like 600 some bills, and you go, oh, I will never figure this out. And so it's just interesting how much one session under your belt makes, I think.
Well, we also had a special session to practice.
True. So we're like on our third, really, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
We're pros now. We're not a citizen legislature right now. We're professionals.
I tip my hat to you, Madam Professional.
right.
I know. No, I'm still drowning.
Oh man. Well, now that we're all feeling way more confident, what are our summer plans, and what does re-election look like for everyone?
Well, I'm running. I don't know if I'll have an opponent. I welcome one if anybody thinks they can do a better job. But I mean, really, I have a new district. I need to go talk to everybody. I mean, just knocking doors, trying to make sure I'm out in front of the public, making sure that I'm accessible, that you don't just have to reach out to me to get a hold of me, that you bump into me somewhere. So hopefully, I mean, regardless of whether I have an opponent or not, that's my plan. I just got to go be with the people. I'm excited because our last campaign season was very much like here on the computer, and I shine out there. Like that's where I'm good. So I'm excited to talk with my community more and hopefully earn 2022.
We should mention if folks want to run. And I don't have the dates right smack in front of me.
I do.
I should say people have to sign up by about the end of May.
So the window is May 12th through the 25th. You sign up, and that is you're signing up to run in the primary. And then vote for that is August 8th. And then after that, it's called, the general. And the vote for that is November 8th.
And if I remember right, it's $25 to register to run.
I forgot that.
It was less than $100.
Yeah. So there is a fee, and that's really, so if folks want to run, you can run in any of the, as an affiliated or unaffiliated candidate. So, yeah.
Yeah, reach out to your local county clerk if you have questions about any of the open positions. And then you file through the Secretary of State. And yeah, so Chad, are you running for re-election?
I am. Mhm.
Yay.
So, well, and I, like you, Representative Provenza, this would be like the last election was weird because of COVID and didn't really want you on their front door and all of that. But the times I've run for city council where I have gone door to door, I really like that kind of thing. I like talking to folks. I like, coming to visit. I like showing up at a park or having coffee and just visiting about topics. And I think that's also where we find that we all, regardless of party affiliation, have a lot more in common than differences. And I think that's also important, that we get off Facebook and that we get off social media and we get off things that just seem so divisive. And when we have a one-on-one conversation, doesn't mean we always agree and doesn't mean we always have the same stances, but you do it certainly much more respectfully than it happens on Facebook or on social media. And so it's, it's just, that's my soapbox.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for FaceTime as well. So I will be joining you, you two, us all three running for re-election. So we're still serving. So we are still your representatives while we're running. So we're wearing multiple hats. But yeah, I think file mid-May, see if any of us have a primary. If not, hit it hard in the summer, door knocking and making sure that we are accessible to you. And come November, hope that all three of us earn your vote and your respect. And you send us for another term, and then we'll have to decide what we call these things because it won't be Freshman Friday anymore.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we should have some sort of supporters get to name whatever sophomore Saturday or something. Yeah, it'll be being, and I also feel weird being an incumbent because I've always just been the kind of person running like, I'm here to, I'm after the good old boys, which I promise you I still am. But it's just like, oh, now I've been here. So yeah, it's gonna be good.
Every 2 years.
Yeah.
Sort of switching gears a little bit, we talked really briefly about this, about how folks can stay engaged, but I was really excited to see that we are still, there is still an opportunity. All the meetings will be streamed. Folks can still sign up to testify remotely. So you don't have to travel. If there's a topic of interest to you on a particular committee, you don't have to travel to that committee to testify. You can do so online and save a lot of time, a lot of windshield time, a lot of money.
Gas prices,
all of those things. So we encourage you to do that. You can see all of the meetings, everything on WyoLeg, so WYOLEG.gov, lists all the committee meetings, where they are, what the topics are, how to sign up. So, we really need folks to be engaged and to continue to testify and share their thoughts. And I was a little bit surprised this year. After the legislative session ended, there was one particular bill, the 90-10 split on big game licenses, or the top 5 game licenses. And I got a lot of emails about how that we shouldn't have done that. And why would we do that? And why is this happening? And I'm like, you're too late, really. So, the bill has already passed, it's being implemented. And these were mostly obviously out of state hunters who didn't like the idea. But so it's really imperative that folks stay engaged and be engaged prior to and during the session, because once that bill is passed, it's too late, really. there can certainly be amendments and things can always be changed, but it's much more difficult. So.
I should offer a reminder. So if you want to testify virtually, the only hiccup is that you have to sign up by 5 p.m. the night before. That I know that Management Council debated that and pushing it back or moving or taking that away. And in order for the staff member for that committee to organize the amount of time that's needed for public comment, to watch and let you into the Zoom room and admit you, they decided they needed a list of people. So do not try to remember to look at the agenda, sign up to testify. If you decided at the last minute that you don't want to testify, at least you've signed up and have that option. So by 5 p.m. the night before the meeting.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we still have YouTube. I mean, it's so hard for people to travel.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, it's a real burden. And so unless it's your job to do that, it's difficult.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else?
No, just in committee meetings start. Actually, I had one last week.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
For a select committee. And then my first one, I believe, is like the 9th and 10th of May. So, I mean, it is right around the corner. So,
Yes,
folks,
I'll be in Casper for minerals, April 25th and 26th. And that agenda just got posted today.
Cool. Just getting it.
Let's get going.
I don't think so we don't meet until June, trying to find the date, or maybe it was May. I don't know, I'm about to find out. I put it in my calendar. Yeah, actually May, so end of May. We meet in Lander, and place to be determined, and I'll be letting y'all know about it.
perfect.
All right, well, it was good to see you both.
Yes,
Good to
thank
see you
all.
also.
Enjoy your Easter weekend.
Yes.
Peace, blessings to you and your loved ones. And reach